Welcome, everyone. I'm Debra Thompson, the president of the Associates of Brand Library and Art Center, and I want to welcome you to tonight's listening session and webinar. The Associates is a nonprofit that raises funds for the many cultural programs at Brand Library and Art Center, including dance series, classical and contemporary music performances, family and children's programs, and exhibitions in our lovely gallery at Brand Library. It's our association with Brand that sparked our interest in working with the Glendale Historical Society and Antaeus for tonight's program. And clearly that interest is shared by many people because we have over 100 people who've joined us already. And I think this is the biggest number of people who've ever attended one of our webinars. So welcome and thank you so much for spending your Friday evening with us. It should be lots of fun. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve Hunt. Take it away, Steve.
Yeah, my video is starting up. I'll get started here. The Glendale Historical Society, TGHS, and our more than 1,200 members are honored and pleased to partner with the Brand Associates and Antaeus Theatre Company for tonight's presentation. The Glendale Historical Society's vision and mission is to preserve Glendale's history and Glendale's rich architectural history. We encourage everyone watching to check out our website at glendalehistorical.org. It is now my pleasure to introduce Alice Johnston. Alice is the Director of Development for Antaeus Theatre Company. Alice.
Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you to everyone who's joining us this evening and to the Brand Associates and the Glendale Historical Society. We're so grateful to all of you for co-hosting this with us this evening. And we're just thrilled to have everybody with us to talk about this play and the history of Glendale. I also want to thank the Michael J. Connell Foundation, who have generously sponsored all 3 seasons of the Zip Code plays, and thank our very own Debra Thompson and Lawrence Riff, who are the sponsors of the play that we'll be listening to tonight. We started working on the Zip Code Plays project at Antaeus in fall 2020 as a way to reach our audiences and continue our work while our theater doors were closed because of the pandemic. And I don't think we ever could have imagined where this project would take us. But over a year later, we've completed 3 seasons, 18 episodes, and the plays have been streamed over 80,000 times. We're going to share links to all 3 seasons in the chat. And if you haven't yet, I hope that you can check out all of our Zip Code plays. In just a moment, we'll begin to stream our audio play, which is about half an hour long. And after that, we'll move on to a discussion about the creative process of putting the play together and also learn a bit more about how the story fits into the history of our home city of Glendale. As you're listening, if you think of any questions that you'd like to ask, you can go ahead and add them through the Q&A box here on Zoom, or if you happen to be watching on YouTube, you can add into the chat section there. We'll share those questions with our panelists during the conversation following the play. And so before we get to the main event, we wanted to start off by watching a brief behind the scenes video to share just a bit about how the Zip Code plays come together. So let's go ahead and look at that now.
When I was a kid, I used to go to the bookstore and they had tapes, like old time radio tapes. And I would listen to them and say, I want to do one of those. This opportunity came up and I was like, okay, I have to get a play in because this is what I've been waiting on.
I heard the first season and I thought, I want to be a part of this.
The reason why we're all doing this is we have the burning desire to create. And because of the pandemic, a lot of that was taken away from us.
Maybe it was because it's, what's happening in the world and we're all sort of really conscious of our city and where we live. This one felt like one that I could write.
And I want to write about the city that I spend so much time in.
There is so much to love about Los Angeles.
Being able to go into the hills or go down to PCH.
I have to tell you, I definitely got really used to every day being 80 degrees and sunny.
Los Angeles is a different way to be a city.
It's a company town. It's where everybody moves if they want to be in, entertainment in some way.
Los Angeles has so much that feeds my soul and feeds my stomach. The food is incredible. It is such a wide variety.
Portos, guava, Armenian dumplings.
And the culture is great here too.
Most people don't realize how diverse LA is because it's not a central place.
You know, when I think of Old Filipino Town, Chinatown, when I think of Little Armenia, there are all these little districts where you can like lose yourself in these worlds.
And it doesn't seem like one place. So I think the great thing about the Zip Code Plays is it ties everybody together through different histories.
And there's so much history yet to be uncovered.
I was just sitting around and Gold Rush came to my mind. And I found the first gold was actually discovered here in the Antelope Valley.
I discovered the Murphy Ranch. What a wild and wacky place.
If asked to write about an area that I care about, West Hollywood would be that in a heartbeat just because of the changes of the city.
I'm fascinated with Echo Park because that used to be basically the Ellis Island of the West Coast.
There was a whole black community in Pacoima, and it was actually one of the only places in the valley black people could live.
Super excited to represent the home team and do Glendale. I know that it's a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of pressure.
When I wrote my piece, I really had to think about what are the indigenous sounds of Los Angeles?
I think the soundtrack to LA is transportation.
For me, cars.
Cars,
Non-stop planes lined up to come in.
sirens, lots of sirens.
Horns, speeding.
Helicopters.
It's the sound of people selling things on the street.
The latest and greatest, or perhaps the most retro dance music.
The old-fashioned blues bars.
Just the sound of people outside eating and drinking and being social.
So what I love is the mixture of it and the intensity of it. That it's never really totally quiet.
There's a lot of advantages to writing radio plays in that the audio is now a new character.
I spent a lot of time listening to Echo Park. Like, what does this feel like? Not in terms of just the vibe, but what does the sound feel like?
It gives you things to play with, and it lets you really engage with the listener's imagination.
People are going to listen, but they're also going to extrapolate what they're hearing and run that movie in their head.
What are they wearing? What do they look like? How does her hair look? You are part of the story at that point.
What can tell us from the past the story of where we might go? So that we can break past the barriers and the polarization that has always been.
So this gave me the opportunity to not only explore queer issues, issues about race, issues about colonialism, and it makes it sound really dire, but it's actually funny.
The desire to bring all of Los Angeles to Los Angeles through audio, you know, and this is something that people can go back to again and again and again. So I just think it's an amazing body of work, and you know, I hope they do another so I can submit again.
Right, after that great word from many of our playwrights who participated in the project, I think we're just about ready to begin the play. The last thing that I'll share is that we want to acknowledge and pay our respect to the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples, who are the traditional caretakers of the land of the Los Angeles Basin, where this play takes place and where we do our work. And so with that, we are happy to present 91201 Glendale, The Six Pianos of Miradero, written by Alex Goldberg and directed by Sanaye Dring. Enjoy.
In 2017, after a decade of producing in a small storefront theater in North Hollywood, Antaeus made the jump to our new home at the Kiki and David Gindler Performing Arts Center on Broadway, just off of Brand Avenue in beautiful downtown Glendale. Which is why we're so excited to begin this season right in our hometown. Playwright Alex Goldberg, whose work you heard in Season 1's disturbing Annexing the Palisades, is back, combining his love of history and theater with a look at the complicated early days of the Jewel City. Set in 1925 and based on actual events, welcome to 91201, Glendale, The Six Pianos of Miradero.
Thank you, Pomeroy. Here is fine. Wait here, this shouldn't take long. Oh, miss! Could you hold the door, please?
Of course.
Thank you kindly. Oh, it's warm already.
And it's only early May.
Oh, are you going to the attorney's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Of course. Are you the secretary?
I am a secretary, yes, but
Wonderful. Good for you. A woman should be able to work if she chooses. Oh, I'll have an iced tea.
Oh, all right. Let me...
Really, dear, it's in the icebox and glasses in the bureau. No need to be nervous. Yes, I know you know who I am and that my husband passed.
Mr. Henderson isn't here yet.
The man is criminally late. Over 1,500 people paid their respects at my husband's funeral, but only one person walked in 20 minutes late.
Here you are.
Thank you, dear. Everyone has been so fabulous. My Leslie suffered so, and it's been wonderful to hear everyone say such kind words. He was truly loved by so many people and by me.
He built this city. Everything here is because of him. This grand street, Brand Boulevard, is named after him.
He named it after himself. His ego was as grand as his ambition. But Leslie put this great city on a map. And sure, he made enemies, rival businessmen, farmers, Los Angeles city officials, but none of that matters. As Leslie liked to say, a great society is built brick by brick on the backs of the unknown masses.
Glendale is a wonderful city.
It's his legacy, Miss...
Carpenter. Bertie Carpenter.
Pleasure, Miss... Or is it Mrs. Carpenter?
Oh. Well, my husband passed as well.
Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry for your loss. Looks like we're bonded in grief. I hope that...
Good morning, Mrs. Brand. Oh, Miss Carpenter. I was not expecting you so promptly.
She makes an excellent iced tea. She's a keeper.
My apologies. The traffic. An accident on Belmont and Broadway made for quite a backup.
Mr. Henderson, you have the worst luck with traffic. I never seem to encounter any traffic when I drive in Los Angeles County. Wide open roads and spaces.
Perhaps I spend more time on the road than you do, Mrs. Brand.
Perhaps if you're always late, you should consider leaving earlier. Perhaps.
And perhaps saying I was in traffic was more proper than sharing that I was late because of difficulty with my digestion, causing me to remain in close proximity to my water closet.
Can we get to the reading of my husband's will? My driver is waiting.
But of course, I see you have... Well, that you have met Miss Carpenter.
Yes, your secretary, and it's Mrs. Carpenter. She just mentioned her husband also passed.
Miss Carpenter, what did you tell her?
I haven't had the opportunity to...
Miss Carpenter, I insisted that prior to...
But we just arrived and I had to pour the iced tea.
What's going on? Are you not the secretary?
She is not my secretary. I made it very clear that I could not be a party to this conversation, Miss Carpenter. I shall attempt to finish my personal business in the water closet down the hall. Miss Carpenter, make this right before I return and tell her what you've done.
I don't follow. You're not Mr. Henderson's secretary.
No, ma'am. I work for Title Guarantee.
Oh, my husband's company.
I don't work for him. I work for William Pruitt.
Of course, Bill Pruitt. He's been to parties at Miradero. That's our house. I'm sure you've seen it up the hill. The Grand Alabaster Palace.
I am familiar.
Does Bill have an interest in Leslie's will? I don't believe they were that close, and I doubt there'll be anything pertaining to him here. Is there unfinished business with my husband? Or just another vulture swooping in to claim what's mine?
No. No, ma'am. As far as I know, Mr. Pruitt does not have any interest in the will. You need to know something. About Leslie. I need to tell you that... Oh, this is very difficult.
Are you implying something illicit? Are you coming here at the reading of my late husband's will while I am mourning my beloved Leslie to tell me some salacious gossip?
Please don't be angry with me. I need to tell you that... Oh, this is hard.
I see. I'm not naive to Leslie's extracurricular activities, and he was aware of mine. We had an understanding. Are you saying that you were my husband's mistress?
No, ma'am. I am not Leslie's mistress.
Well, that's just swell. I mean, you're young and attractive, so naturally I could see how you'd capture a wandering eye, but Leslie was not one to...
He's my husband. We are married.
He's... Did you say married?
Yes, ma'am.
I beg your pardon.
Leslie and I are legally married.
All right. So you and my husband married. And when did you marry my husband?
January of 1922. The 12th.
I see. So 3 years ago. All right. And where did these blessed nuptials take place?
Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. In Mexico. In Tijuana.
Oh.
We met a few years earlier, on a train from Oregon to Los Angeles. I had just been crowned Miss Nevada, and I was competing in other beauty pageants. We fell in love and started relations.
Married. In Mexico. Leslie and I were married in Mexico, in Monterey.
That was immensely satisfying. Everything sorted out with you ladies? Good, good. Is anyone else hungry? I'm famished. Would either of you care for some jerky? Salted beef, very delicious. No. Well, I have plenty. Just say the word. All right. Shall we commence with our official business?
You knew about this? Her claim of marriage to Leslie.
My relationship with all clients remains confidential. It is the nature of being an attorney.
Oh, stop, John. You've been to parties at my house. Ellen and I are close friends.
And regardless of my business relationship with Leslie, it is not my place to share such information. Not with you, not my wife, not anyone.
It can't be true.
It is very much true. Leslie married Miss Bertie Carpenter in Mexico 3 years ago. I have a copy of the certificate on file if you would like
So you're saying that my husband is a bigamist?
No, ma'am. He was a bigamist. He ceased to be so upon his demise.
You are uninvited from any future parties at Miradero.
Let us focus on Leslie's wonderful legacy. The growing city of Glendale. He provided...
And you! You attended one of our parties. I remember a horrific red gingham dress.
Leslie purchased it for me.
Of course he did, because women's fashion was the only thing he knew nothing about. Besides fidelity, of course. So you came to my house.
At the invitation of my husband.
My house. To one of my parties wearing a hideous dress picked out by my husband. How dare you insult me, and how dare you insult the memory of my husband?
Our husband.
My husband. How dare you insult me, my late husband, and the good people of Glendale. Mr. Henderson, please remove her so we can read the will and move on with our lives.
Miss Carpenter has a claim to attend the proceedings as, like you, she was legally married to Mr. Brand and has a right to hear the contents of the will.
I cannot imagine he left her anything. As his attorney, I'm sure you can confirm that this delusional woman will not receive a cent of my money.
Mr. Brand was rigorously revising his will in his final weeks. Despite his body failings, his mind was sharp until the very end. This final version was signed 2 days prior to his passing, and I have not had the opportunity to peruse it. So we can now do it together.
If there's anything going to you, I will contest and sue you for every last nickel.
I don't want your money.
Then why are you here?
Because of our sons, Lee and Jack. And since you failed to have any children, Lee and Jack are the true heirs to Mr. Brand's legacy.
Well, this is clearly business best discussed by the women folk, so I will excuse myself and
Sit down.
I shall just run down to the 5 and dime as I am out of rolling papers.
Sit. You have children.
2 boys. Lee is 3 and Jack is 18 months.
Do they have Leslie's eyes?
And his ears.
I would be remiss if I did not mention that only Lee is a true son of Mr. Brand.
That is not true.
Mr. Brand has declared several times that your other son is...
Jack.
That your other son is not his, that you had relations with other men, and that
There
those
were
acts...
no other men.
And that those acts of infidelity led to the birth of your bastard second son.
There were no other men. I was caring for Lee, who was only 9 months old when Leslie and I resumed our marriage relations. Lee had colic. I never left the house. Where would I find another man?
Nevertheless, Mr. Brand acknowledges only Lee, and therefore he is the only true heir.
I am the only true heir.
Well, then, we should probably read the will. I'm sure everything will sort itself out. As you can see, this document was sealed and notarized. No one has seen the contents since Mr. Brand authorized this version in the days before his passing. All right. Let's see. All right. I, Leslie Coombs Brand of the city of Glendale, and are you sure I couldn't interest you ladies in some jerky?
Read the damn will.
Fine. I, Leslie Coombs Brand of the city of Glendale in the county of Los Angeles and the state of California, being of sound mind, memory, and understanding, on this day of April 8th, 1925, make this my final will and testament. First, I give, devise, and bequeath to Arthur F. Morian, beloved friend and vice president of Title Guarantee and Trust Company, the property at Mono Lake.
The summer home?
The property at Mono Lake, including all furniture and fixtures on the premises, and 2 automobiles, the Tioga Wolf and the Duesenberg with accompanying equipment.
Fine. Fine. I never much cared for the Mono Lake house, and we have plenty of cars.
Second, I give, devise, and bequeath to John Lloyd Henderson, Esquire, my 1921 Dodge Roadster, and my T. Eaton and Company leather valise. Oh, my stars, how thoughtful. He always told me I needed to travel, and now he has provided a car and bag for the occasion.
May we?
Of course. Third, I give, devise, and bequeath one of my pianos to the Pasadena School of the Blind. The specific piano is left at the discretion of Mary Louise Brand. Fourth, I give, devise, and bequeath one of my pianos to the Glendale Hotel. The specific piano is left at the discretion of Mary Louise Brand. Fifth, I give, devise, and bequeath one of my pianos...
This is ludicrous. I play the piano. He can't just give away all the pianos.
It appears he only bequeaths 4 of your pianos.
4? That only leaves 2.
Well, now, I suppose that leaves 1 for each hand, Mrs. Brand. I don't know much about playing the piano, but that strikes me as more than generous.
That is beyond the point. Those are pianos that I play, not him. He has no right to just...
He has every right to any property in his name.
Excuse me, but may we skip ahead?
One does not skip ahead at a will reading.
This is very stressful, as you can imagine.
Agreed. I would prefer not to sit here any longer next to this adulteress.
We are married.
Were married. He's deceased.
I love him, and his sons love him.
one son according to law.
And I have spent more than enough time in the same room with Mrs. Brand. So, may we expedite the process?
Agreed. Can we skip to the part that concerns her? I'd like to know what I'm going to contest sooner rather than later.
This is highly unorthodox. But I understand that these occasions are difficult for emotional women, so I shall make an adjustment. All right. Let's see here. Let me... Oh. Miss Carpenter, I am afraid that this will makes no accommodations for you.
What? Nothing?
See? Very good. Now you can leave and we can...
What about my sons? Anything for Lee and Jack. His only children. Or even just Lee. Please, Jack again. Please tell me he didn't curse his only children to a life of poverty.
I'm so sorry, Miss Carpenter, but there is absolutely nothing in this will that... Miss Carpenter. Miss Carpenter.
This is neither the time nor the place.
Here, my dear, take my handkerchief.
Thank you.
All right. We've had our cry. Let's continue.
Please, Mrs. Brand, have you no sympathy?
Have you no sympathy? The woman appears at the most inopportune moment, attempts to upend my life. And now that she has failed, I should feel for her.
I gave all my heart to Leslie. I gave him my body. I gave him sons. 2 sons. I don't want any money. I just want my boys to be secure. I want them to know to know that they are truly appreciated. To know how special they are.
I'm sure you're a very good mother, and they know they are loved.
That's right. I am a mother.
Oh.
Carried each for 9 months through the sweat and the pain and birthed them. They came out of my body. They took part of me with them. Part of him as well. They are blood. They are Leslie's blood. They are what remains.
I am what remains. Only me.
This is a hard time for all of us. Our city lost her great founder, the man who brought commerce, water, electricity, telephones, and even the trains. We are all at a loss here.
Should we continue? So I can return home and put this awful appointment behind me.
I should leave.
Indeed. You've caused enough trouble. Leave me and my husband alone.
Miss Carpenter!
Bertie!
Miss Carpenter, get off my floor.
John, please, help me get her to the chair.
Sorry. Oh, I don't know what happened.
Shh, child.
Oh, thank you. I'm so embarrassed. I have never lost my balance.
You fainted and fell upon my floor.
I never, not even when I was expecting.
John, get her some iced tea.
I'm not sure where.
Oh, for heaven's sake, I'll get it.
These floors are not designed to support swooning women. That is not their function.
Here's some iced tea, Bertie, and a wet compress. Hold it to your head.
I'm so sorry.
Just drink this and breathe.
I did not mean to.
It happens. It's unusually hot.
And it's only early May.
Miss Carpenter, now that you are safely ensconced in my leather chair, I feel it's important to mention that your accident was due to your emotional state and not stemming from any flaw in the flooring or any other type of negligent
mishap. For heaven's sake, John. Let's continue, shall we?
All right. All right. Where were we? 6th, I give, devise, and bequeath 1 piano to the Glendale Council of the Arts.
I'm sure all of Leslie's knickknacks will find a proper home. can we move on to what concerns me, and then I will leave you to your business.
But protocol dictates that-
Please, John.
Here we go. In regards to the state of Miradero, I give, devise, and bequeath 800 acres of land to the city of Glendale for whatever use she sees fit.
Miradero?
What a generous gift. A truly selfless act which will no doubt benefit our great city and help continue its growth as a true jewel of Southern California.
It's my home.
Now, Mrs. Brand, don't get hysterical. I'm not finished. The 800 acres are designated as outside the main gates of the residence. As for the house of Miradero and the surrounding 50 acres, I leave it for Mrs. Mary Louise Brand's personal use and enjoyment.
50 acres. Does that include the Japanese garden? The pool? The tennis courts?
I believe so.
But the property remains mine. He gives away 800 acres just like that to a city?
She is a great city that he built, a city with a population of 300 people when he arrived. Now we are roughly 40,000.
But he leaves me as a condolence. 50 acres in the house. Is that correct?
Shall I continue? As for the house of Miradero and the surrounding 50 acres, I leave it for Mrs. Mary Louise Brand's personal use and enjoyment until her passing. After her passing, it shall be bequeathed to the city of Glendale.
What?
Oh, let me finish. To the city of Glendale, to be turned into a park and a grand library for the use of every good citizen of Glendale, so knowledge and growth may continue in perpetuity. Miss Carpenter, are you all right?
Much better now. Thank you.
So I get nothing.
I don't think you heard me correctly. 50 acres in the house. The beautiful house you've lived in since your husband had it built, and a generous stipend.
You will not starve.
I live there. And then when I pass, it passes as well.
I don't understand. When you die, you're dead. What does it matter?
It matters. It matters because it's not mine. I am a guest. I am a house cat.
Okay, don't look at it like that. It is more like your husband is caring for you, making sure your financial needs are met, and that you are not troubled with...
That I am not trusted. I am not to be trusted with the financial dealings or any inheritance. I exist in purgatory. That is all.
Mrs. Brand, the financial world is very complicated.
Is it? How so?
There are thousands of examples of the complexities of the financial empire your husband labored to establish, nuances and details that simply cannot be handed down on a whim.
Give me one example.
All right. The addition to your house.
The tower.
Yes. Why did he add the tower?
He wanted... We wanted to take advantage of our view. Our old bedroom was drenched in sunlight at dawn. With a new angle, the sunlight would not be invasive. And now we watch the glorious sunset over the Santa Monica Mountains. It reminds me of Tuscany.
And how does one access the new bedroom?
Through the kitchen. I thought the view on the western end might be better, but Leslie said the land on the east side by the kitchen was more suitable.
The land on the east side was more suitable, but not for the reason you think.
It is a tax break.
A what?
I see this frequently at title guarantee. In California, property tax is based on where you sleep, where you actually lay your head. Your house is in Glendale proper, but on the border. The addition is in Los Angeles County proper, with much lower property tax.
So you mean...
Your husband saved your estate hundreds of dollars a year by adding that bedroom.
The father of Glendale avoided paying property tax to Glendale.
And there are more examples like that. Many more reasons why you need not be involved.
Are you implying that my husband did illegal activity?
Your husband followed the letter of the law. I made sure of that. But it is complicated. Now, why don't you enjoy your remaining years on the property you know and love, knowing that it is safe? And Upon your passing, the city of Glendale will benefit even further.
Our marriage lasted for over 30 years. A testament to a lifetime of love. We were a great team, and I do not deserve to be cast aside like a piano.
A great society is built brick by brick on the backs of the unknown masses.
You have no sympathy.
Now you know what it feels like. Our husband had one true devotion, the city of Glendale. And nothing else matters.
I have heard enough from you today.
I have heard enough from you for a lifetime. I will show myself out.
Miss Carpenter,
Yes.
if you ever find yourself in need of an attorney,
Then I will make sure I secure a competent one.
I will contest the will. Written days before he passed, he was no longer himself.
I have the previous dozen iterations of his will, going back 5 years. While the incidental knickknacks, as you phrased it, vary from draft to draft, he was consistent with the wording of this clause regarding your property from the very beginning. Immaculately consistent.
I see. Well, if there's nothing else...
Very well. Ellen and I look forward to your next Sunday fun day at Miradero. We always enjoy our afternoons with you. And
There will be no more parties at Miradero.
well, that is a shame.
A shame indeed. Oh, waiting to pour more salt in my wounds.
I missed the streetcar. And this is the only shade while I wait for the next one.
You have ruined our name. You have tarnished a legacy.
Leslie married both of us.
That does not make us equals.
That is without question. Why don't you get back in your fancy motor car and go back to your mansion and 50 acres?
Pomeroy? Thank you, Pomeroy. Oh. Miss Carpenter,
Yes.
it's certainly a hot day, especially for early May. I'd hate to see you faint again.
I am fine.
Get in with me. Pomeroy and I shall see you to your home.
Really? Thank you, Mrs. Brand.
It's only fitting we drive on Brand Boulevard together, Mrs. Brand.
You've been listening to 91201, Glendale, The Six Pianos of Miradero. Written by Alex Goldberg, directed by Lisa Sanaye Dring, starring Alexandra Hellquist as Bertie Carpenter, Peter James Smith as John Lloyd Henderson Esquire, and Kitty Swink as Mary Louise Brand. Ben Altman is production stage manager. Jeff Gardner is our extraordinary audio producer, sound designer, and Foley artist. Andrea Almond is co-designer. Ellen Mandel created our original music, and our sound editor is Neil Woganson. Antaeus Theatre Company is an actor-driven ensemble that explores timely and timeless work grounded in our passion for the classics. Our artistic director is Bill Brochtrup, Anna Rose O'Halloran is our producing executive director, and Nicole Samsel is our director of operations. For more information about the Zip Code Plays or to support Antaeus, please visit our website at zipcodeplays.info. While there, check out the original illustrated maps of each of our zip codes created by artist Cynthia Jaquette. You can also visit highlights of each neighborhood in person or virtually by taking the Zip Code Plays tour. If you enjoyed this production, please leave us a rating or review. It really helps new listeners find us. If you're looking for more great theater in Glendale, check out our friends at Imagine Theater, LA's theater for young audiences, where they champion kids, inspiring them with the courage to find their own voices. Glendale is also home to the Armenian Dramatic Arts Alliance, supporting the legacy of Armenian arts and culture and championing the voices of human rights with their Global Playwriting Award.
Well, lots to talk about from this play. We've assembled a panel that will be able to tell us both about the content of the play and about the creative juices that went into making the play. So let me introduce our panel, starting with Alex Goldberg. Alex he wrote the play. He's a screenwriter and a director as well as a playwright. And he has many credits with Antaeus, including annexing the Palisades from the first season of the Zip Code Plays. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Thanks, everyone, for coming in.
Lisa Sanaye Dring directed the play. Lisa has an extensive list of directing credits nationally and internationally. And this is her first time directing with Antaeus. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Debra.
Kitty Swink portrayed Mary Louise Brand in the play. She's a member of the Antaeus Company, has been a co-artistic director, and has appeared in notable Antaeus productions such as Macbeth. You might recognize her from her many film and TV appearances. Welcome, Kitty. And Arlene Vidor almost needs no introduction to the people who have joined us tonight, but I will introduce her. She's a past president of both the Associates of Brand Library and the Glendale Historical Society, is a member of the board of directors of Antaeus, and serves on the City of Glendale Arts and Culture Commission. One of Arlene's many interests is Glendale history, and particularly all things brand. So she's a very welcome addition to our panel. Now, we have some questions prepared that will kind of divide our time between the craft of the play and the content of the play. And we'll use those questions to get things started. But if you do have a question, make sure you enter it in the chat. We're monitoring that, and we'll bring up questions as they fit into our discussion. We're going to start the conversation with a question from Steve. So, Steve. Actually, while Steve is locating us, let me ask the first question. And this is to Alex. Alex, for those listening who might not know the name, who was Leslie Brand and what's his importance?
So Leslie Brand was one of the people who put Glendale on the map. He didn't found the town, but when he moved here, he realized its potential. He knew it was beautiful. He and his wife thought it looked like Tuscany, and he did a lot of things to draw attention to Glendale. And I know that Arlene will probably go a little more into that later, but he is basically one of the founders of the city as we know it.
And his name is everywhere.
Yes, and it's true in the play.
Boulevards, buildings.
Yeah, boulevards, buildings, and he did name it after himself. It wasn't named in his honor. He said, "This, we're going to call it after me."
Yeah. Not a guy with some ego in the game here. So you and Arlene worked closely together in coming up with some of the content of the play. So what was that relationship like, and how did you work together to develop this tale of the brands?
Well, it's safe to say that this wouldn't have happened without Arlene. We met following the Salon for my play Annexing the Palisades in season 1, and she said, there needs to be a Glendale story. And it's like, of course there has to be a Glendale story. And I said, well, tell me more. And over a period of months, she would pitch ideas to me, and they were all fantastic. They're all great stories, but I had to wait for the one that resonated with me as a writer and an artist. I mean, they're all great stories, but some of them just weren't mine to tell. And I felt this one, there was a lot of ways for me to launch into it. So that was how it started. And then, she gave me a tour of the library and did a lot of fact checking for me. I was like, did this really happen? And she's like, yeah, sure, it totally did. So that's how it went in before the writing.
Arlene, do you want to chime in? You're muted, so make sure we can hear you.
Well, I will chime in. Alex told it pretty much the way it happened. We did strike up our first conversation right after the Alex's zip code play, Annexing the Palisades, which was January 15th, 2021. And we started talking about Glendale. And as he said, I pitched ideas. Some of the ideas I pitched to him, just off the top of my head, were Glendale's racist sundown town era, lots of stories there. The growth of the city's Armenian population, the Korean population, some incidents and people associated with Rock Haven Sanitarium, and Mr. Brand and his secret history. And obviously, by the amount of questions Alex was asking, I could tell that the secret history was definitely of interest. I copied the 1993 biography of Brand that one of his relatives, Judy Brand, had written that talked about and speculated about his relationship with Bertie and the two children. This has been an open secret in the Brand family for quite a while. And then I sent him the article that came out in the LA Times in 2008 by Cecilia Rasmussen, talking about this issue. And by the way, I have to give a big shout out to our Glendale local historian, Catherine Yamada, who is on the call tonight, is online tonight with us, because she's the one who connected Judy Brand, the first purveyor of the story. She connected her to Cecilia Rasmussen, and that's how the story got out into the public domain. And Cecilia did some DNA stuff and really got solid evidence that there was another Brand family and Brand relatives. And just as an aside, we ended up in 2008, the Historical Society and Brand Associates collaborated on a presentation by Cecilia, and she brought with her Cherry Brand, who Cherry Brand lived in the middle of California, and she was the daughter of Lee Carpenter, Lee Gordon, the son, the secret son of Mr. Brand. And Cherry Brand, who I tried to get in touch with for this event, but I couldn't reach her. Cherry Brand was like a female spitting image of Mr. Brand, and it was quite astounding to meet her and hear her talk. So that's kind of how it all came down.
How many people knew about this other Mrs. Brand at the time that this story was taking place? Was it known by anybody, or what was do you have any idea about that?
Well, it was an open secret in the family. You know, it was a big extended family. Brand had two sisters and a brother, and they all had families. And so there was an extended family that was in touch, and they came to Brand's estate often. So it wasn't that it wasn't known. It just wasn't out in the open. As you know, things in our age of information are much more out in the open than they used to be. I mean, you can go back to, people like John F. Kennedy, who had quite an active private life, and it was kept very close, kept very close to the vest. So you can imagine at the turn of the century, this stuff did not get out, but people did know. It was just people kept it close to the vest.
Do you think that Mary Louise had just turned a blind eye to it, or did she really not know what was going on? Alex, do you have a feel for that? Or Kitty, what do you think? You inhabited the character.
Well, I could jump in and say that she also apparently had her own partners on the side as well. So it was they had reached some sort of understanding.
And Alex references that in the play. Oh, we've dabbled. I think for my money as an actor, I chose that she didn't know about the children, but she knew about the affairs.
Yeah, that would be quite a shocker.
Yes.
Steve, do you want to ask Alex about your question about what playwrights do in terms of the historical record and how they expand on that? Question 6. Steve, you're muted.
That's a problem having an old guy here on the show. Yeah, Alex, first off, I really enjoyed this. A lot of good research, well put together, and the well presented from all the actors. I'm just wondering how you decide as a playwright where and how you can expand on or deviate from the historical record.
Well, our job as the playwright is to tell a compelling story and to show a pivotal dramatic moment. So that is where the fiction comes in this. This event didn't happen. And in fact, I didn't learn until after that public readings of wills like this are purely made up for theater and film and TV. They don't really happen in the real world, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. It's like, why would you have to go somewhere to gather and sit with a bunch of people you don't like to read a will? So using that as a definite false mechanism, but it helped spring the drama. So I just took all the facts I got from Arlene, the stuff that we did know, and the history that I had of both women to infer their characters. Now, the attorney character was completely made up for the sake of this, but I mean, Brand certainly had an attorney at that time, and we tried to be as true to how they would talk and what they would say in this situation. But all the backstory, the stuff that's revealed, is true, and including the addition to the house to help beat taxes, But that's what I try to do, is create drama and use as much truth as possible to do that.
Was it a fact, or did you invent the fact that all attorneys in those years ate beef jerky?
I would assume that if this man was a bachelor at the time, his diet is not going to be great, and that's probably true of many eras. But certainly that was his. We also wanted to give some levity and break up the drama to it, but also establish status and to point out that even though he's kind of a buffoon at times, he still holds a lot of high status in society and in this room. The status between the two wives goes back and forth over who controls the status, but I wanted to give him his own special pedestal.
Arlene.
Yeah, I just noticed, and this is from Jomi Wilson, who certainly knows quite a bit about Mr. Brand because she gives tours at the Brand Library when it's open. That she is exactly right. Mr. Brand did not neglect Bertie entirely. In fact, he left her a ranch. He left her money to support her, and he left her a ranch that was located in precisely at Rinaldi and Laurel Canyon, which is in the Chatsworth area. And this is an area that Mr. Brand did a lot of development work and speculation in as well. There is a Brand Park out in the Mission Hills area in the West Valley, as well as a Brand Boulevard. And he did leave her a ranch there. So he did take care of her to some extent. He didn't totally neglect her.
But just to fact check, because I may be wrong on this, but I believe that the ranch that she lived in, he sold to her at a very, very cut rate. He was basically giving it to her, but this is prior to his death. I think this is while she was still alive.
That is absolutely correct. He did take care of her. He actually had her working at, they met on a train. I think you had, I don't remember if this was, but they met on a train coming from Oregon, and she was a beauty queen. And he helped her become a secretary at Title Guarantee. And he did, look after her in a covert way. So yes, this was all going on while she was alive. And he was alive, excuse me.
So the two main characters are the two Mrs. Brands, and then the rather buffoonish and misogynistic lawyer. So let's talk about the ladies, or the women, Kitty and Lisa. What did you hope to show about the relationship between the two Mrs. Brands, and particularly the changing relationship that develops?
You want to go first, Lisa? I called Lisa when I got the script and said, can we talk about this? Because it's so interesting to me that their status shifts back and forth all the time. And that I'm in the car like you are in Los Angeles talking to Lisa. And I was really interesting that Mary Louise is both generous and hideous to Bertie alternately. So it was an interesting conversation that we had trying to walk that fine line. I think without Lisa's direction, I probably would have leaned more towards hideous than I did. Alexandra's on the Zoom, so I don't know how she feels. Lisa pulled me back from my natural intention to be mean-spirited. What can I tell you?
You play imperious very well, you know, Kitty.
Yeah, I know. My best childhood friend is also here tonight, so she could probably talk about that too.
I think it's really interesting how they're bonded at the end through their wound. I mean, they think one another is the enemy, and then I think they both realize that. Sorry, my dog is whining. Ponyo. That they both feel mishandled by the man they love, and so that, you know, as love triangles go, like who is the bad actor in that situation can shift and change really easily. But I think at the end, you know, they were both done wrong, and then they're both grieving the person. You know, it's like Mrs. Brand should ride with Mrs. Brand. It's like, oh, they both lost the love of their lives. So I think that vacillation is something that Alex wrote really beautifully, and I think that Kitty and Alexandra explored it in the show.
Yeah. So it's unusual for actors to really just have to convey all this information about their emotional changes and their growth, you know, throughout the play, just with voices. What's that like, Kitty? And Lisa, how do you direct someone in voice only?
It's still a physical activity. I was more tired from the day that we recorded this, from all the breathing and the intention. You have to put all of your energy into your voice. As an actor on stage, I tend to be quite still when possible. I know that there's people who would laugh when they heard that, having seen me like tumble over sofas. But that said, I think it's really quite a physical activity to be a voice actor. I do it not a lot, but I do it quite often. I'm doing another project right now. And so you're breathing hard and you're finding your intention. And Jeff Gardner, a brilliant sound designer and Foley artist, worked with Lisa and Alex so that we knew when to step in and when to step out and to drink the water. And you've got all these things going in your head that aren't natural because you're standing with headphones on and a microphone. So in a funny way, it's more physical than doing the average play on stage, to me, because being on stage is such a natural activity. Lisa, what do you think?
I just want to, it's different, but it's really fun. Like it felt a little like table work, except you had to solidify some, you know, sometimes with table work, you make some decisions, then you get on your feet and you find more. And so in this one, it was like, and it was amazing because these actors are really good. And that was lucky because we didn't have a lot of time. So it was like, we worked it, but then to hear it be recorded, it's wild because we're, you know, so much of tech for a director is visual. You know, but when you're in that space, you're thinking about the lights and the set and the costumes and everything. And the sound is also there, but that's just one of many. And for it to be a completely oral experience was wild. And also because Jeff was amazing as a person and an artist. He's been working on, I think, all of these. I got to sit back and really hear him work because the sound was so, you know, he was so precise about what he needed, that the actual day we recorded was just, you know, a few notes, but really listening and kind of geeking out, and especially geeking out to how good the sound was, because everybody got shipped these like incredible setups with, I mean, you might be able to talk about it a little more, but it sounded incredible after being on our Zooms and everything to hear all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, they're like right in my ear. It was fun.
It's also intimate to be,
Yeah.
the headphones are so intimate. It's like being in a very close quarters with somebody because you're hearing them come into your soul through a headphone. It's fantastic.
What we didn't show the attendees today is the video of the actual production of the radio plays. We decided to show the Playwrights video rather than the production video. And what people need to know is that these actors were never together with the director at all during the creation of the radio play. They were at home with their own individual little setup and this was all because of COVID, that was sanitized and packaged with directions on how to set it up. And every actor had to create their own little, studio at home. And then the sound designer mixed everything and made it sound like the conversations were occurring with all the sound effects. It's really an amazing feat, and sounds just great. Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. So there was a question, Alex, I'll just ask you about sound. What role do sound effects play in the narrative and the tone of the play? Especially at the very end, there's an amazing number of different sound effects at the very end as we're leaving.
Yeah, so about the ending, I wanted to convey what was mentioned briefly at the end of the play, which is that all empires are built on the backs of either slaves or just the anonymous people. And in this story of Glendale, these two Mrs. Brands are anonymous. So what happens in that last moment is they literally drive off into obscurity and they're drowned out by the development of Glendale. And so we hear a montage that Jeff so wonderfully put together of street sounds, what it would sound like over the course of from 1925 to today. And that's what he put together. So that's where the city is. So these women are forgotten, but the city grew. So Leslie Brand achieved what he wanted to do. So that's what we're going for with that. As for the rest of the play, it's a great opportunity to create audio as a character. And because we are so focused on just what we're hearing, there's a lot that we can do. And we also have the freedom of taking the audience on a journey that is, in some respects, not as limiting as looking at it on stage. When you're looking, you're focusing here and there. When it's audio, we can control it a little more. So that's what's fun. And I think I put in the chat that having done this now twice, I still feel I haven't reached the potential of what an audio play can do. I feel this is a good audio drama and these actors do a great job. But I feel like there are other zip code plays where I'm like, yeah, you really you took us on a journey and you did great things. And, there's making out and people beating each other up and I should have done that. But, well, fool me twice.
Alex, we have a question from Sarah, who's in the audience about, did you find making an audio play impacted how you could tell the story?
Yeah, so it made us focus on that. It made us focus on what you were going to hear. And that has to come into the outlining process when I start to write it. It's not something that you can think about later. You really have to create, and I do outline all of my writing. And that's a character. Audio is a character from the beginning. You have to track its journey. And so I did. And even the little things like, pouring a drink and falling on the floor. What is the floor like? What chairs are they sitting in? And Jeff had a lot to say about that I didn't put in the script initially, but a lot of it was like, all right, focus on the specifics all the time.
Okay, Steve, let's see. Lisa, you wanted to chat with Alex about the structure of a 27-minute play and what the potential might be for an expanded version into a big space.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think that I'm always really admirous of people who can do the 10-minute, the one acts, the half hours. And I think Alex captured, what you said in the beginning, Alex, about you are here to show a dramatic turn. And I think you had just the right amount of humanity in there and the right amount of build for this, while also giving us a sense of the world outside. So I'm curious the challenges when approaching something that's shorter. if you felt like you had to, keep some things away, or you didn't outline and it was too much or too little, how to deal with that length. And then also, if you were to make this a longer piece, if you see a potential for that, and what you would add in there.
Good questions. So for the first part, as for outlining, yeah, I outline everything I write. Now, if I outline a screenplay or a TV episode, those are highly structured. And one of the joys of theater for me is it's a little more freeing. And so I like the analogy of slalom skiing. Now that we're in the Olympics, we can talk about that slalom skiing. So you've got these poles that I place from beginning to end. And it's the same with the full-length play as it is with the short one, only the poles are, the hill is shorter. But so I've got like 6 or 7 beats that are the story. In beat 1, this happens. This is the twist. This is the introduction. This is the twist. In beat 2, this is the intro. This is the twist. All of them. So the poles are there. You can go as wide around the poles as you want to get down the mountain. But you're going to, you've got to come back to the poles. So when I finished the first draft, I'm like, well, I drafted, I'm like, this is going to be a great 20 to 25 minute play. Wrote my first draft and it's like 35 minutes. So it's like, all right, well, I went out a little bit too much. So you bring it in. But yeah, structure is just as important. You can't free form it, especially with a short form. I do some 10-minute plays too. You cannot free form a 10-minute play. It turns into basically a sketch. Or maybe some people can. I can't. Some people can. As for your second question, I do think there's a lot to this world that can be explored. I don't know about this play, but I'm going to throw it back at you, Lisa, because Lisa's also a very accomplished writer as well as a director, and I met her actually as a dramaturg. So I'm curious to know. I want pitches from you, maybe not now, but like, how would you see it? This story, I can see the world expanding, but I don't know about this story. This story feels very tight, and here it is.
That's, I mean, like, ooh, that's pressure. I think that I love stories that weave in and out of each other. So I could see a world where this is like the second act of 2 women losing their husband in the first act. So seeing their lives sort of intertwine. I also think, they're generationally different. They've got, social statuses, and seeing how that is just in their daily lives would be great. And then having them come to a head in this, I think would be really amazing. That's my dog again. I'm sorry. She's decided this moment to start whining. I mean, I loved living with these characters in this world. And I think this man's is so epic, he has, his name's all over Glendale. And to think of sort of the echoes of that person, what we think of as like great men, and especially back in the day when, there weren't great women or great non-binary folks, right? In history, there were very few up until fairly recently. So to think about what life was in the shadow of that person, and then what it's like to lose that person. Yeah, I think you could totally do a full length.
That's great. I took notes. Thank you very much. That's awesome. And like, I'm now seeing like a third act where we can go a generation beyond. And we know for a fact that Birdie sold that house and spent most of her days, I believe, living on Brand Boulevard or very near it in like a small 2-bedroom apartment or something like that. So what was life like for her sons, with Glendale booming? Glendale benefited greatly from that will. There was a question in there, what, became of his bequest, and, they parceled it out and sold a lot of it into developments. I mean, Arlene can back me up on that, but I believe the city was built a lot on what he donated.
Alex, how did you come up with, why did you decide that the title was going to be The 6 Pianos of Miradero?
The house is Miradero or El Miradero. That's what they called it. And I wanted to have that in the title. It reflects, definitely feels Southern California, and it feels Tuscan, which they also wanted to, convey. But once I learned about what the property was like, and the fact that there were 6 pianos in the house, that really says something about, you can talk about a wine cellar, or you could talk about stables, or you could talk about, which they, had all these things, Japanese garden. But when you say that someone's house has 6 pianos in it, you really are painting a picture of what kind of wealth that is.
I wondered if maybe you were commenting on that he wanted to have a lot of everything, including 2 wives. 6 pianos, 2 wives, you know, a bunch of cars. He was very much a collector of things, and he had to have 2 wives too.
Yes, he did. Well, I believe in his mind, and I'm just guessing, bigamy is less of an offense than being a bastard child. So I think maybe in his own way, he was thinking of the future, and he's like, well, you know, at least you know your parents were married, kid. You know, that's something. You know.
Arlene, is it true that he thought that one of his children was illegitimate and disowned one of the sons?
Okay, we don't have any hard evidence of that. So I would have to look at the article, and maybe someone can the article that Cecilia did. I think the DNA research was through the Lee line, and I think that Jack ended up moving to Australia. So it's indeterminate, but there's no evidence that the sons were not his. And if you pull up I think I might have given you guys a birth certificate, and I think that might have been, yes. And that birth certificate is for, this is really interesting. There's a lot of fiction in this birth certificate. I guess it was a lot easier in those days to lie on a birth certificate. But as you can see, the mother is Bertie Esther Carpenter, and the father is Lee Gordon. The name Gordon is a name that Mr. Brand pulled out of the phone book to use as a pseudonym for his family. So he called himself Lee Gordon so that, Bertie could take the name Gordon and they could have this connection. He certainly was not from Johannesburg, South Africa. And this is the birth certificate for the child Jack. And so, we definitely have here evidence that Mr. Brand, pseudonyming himself as Lee Gordon, is the father of baby Jack, and Bertie Esther Carpenter is the mother. And if you look at the signer of the certificate, Ernest Bashore, some of you will recognize that name. Ernest Bashore, until a certain era of the 20th century, was the owner of the Verdugo adobe, which is the Verdugo adobe is Catalina Verdugo adobe is a very historic adobe that dates back to the original Spanish landowners who owned the area of Glendale. And the Bashore family came to own it. And Mr. Bashore's daughter was a woman named Doris McKentley, who was a very active participant in Glendale Historical Society activities all the way up until recently. She died at a very old age and had been involved with the doctor's house and many different things. And Doris was the daughter of Ernest. So I never talked to her about this, but there definitely is a strong Glendale connection there in that Doris's father, Ernest Bashore, delivered this child. And so one gets the feeling that this was likely, it's probably likely that both kids were his, but we can't say for sure. We can't rule out anything, really. So
let's look at the other photographs that you wanted to share, Arlene, because they do shed some light on Mr. Brand. So
piece some of those up. Mr. Brand came here. Oh, all right. Here's some photos. One from early on while Mr. Brand was alive on the left, and then when Mrs. Brand was the only one occupying the house in 1945, which is the year she died. And you see 2 pianos. So there's at least 2 pianos that we have pictures of. And what Alex mentioned before, there was a young relative who Judy Brand quoted in her biography of Mr. Brand. A young relative was visiting and remarked at the 6 pianos that, it was remarkable to this young child that they had 6 pianos, which I think is remarkable. So here's some pictures of the pianos. in the library and drawing room, which are now, of course, part of the Brand Library. And here's a picture of Mr. Brand. Did gain international fame for a while by hosting a fly-in party on his property. He had a hangar and a runway. He had a plane, which he called the Mono Eagle. And he had all these celebrities fly in. It was a big event. And you see him here with, on the left, Ruth Rowland, and on his right, Mary Miles Minter, both big glamorous silent screen stars of that era. And then all the way over on the right of the picture is Mrs. Brand. So he did love the ladies. There are many pictures of him in the archives with, where there'll be 20 women in the picture and they're picnicking and there's Mr. Brand in the middle. So he definitely liked female company and he liked to be around famous people.
We should also point out that he was a very short man, and he's like 5'1", maybe 5'2", and had built a rocking chair for his front porch with the legs sawed off so his feet would hit the ground.
Does he look like Charlie Chaplin a little bit, like the older Charlie Chaplin? A little bit, yeah. I guess maybe it's the cap that looks.
Yeah, familiar. I think in this picture he does. I don't know if I gave you the picture of him as a young man when he first came to Glendale. He was rather handsome, but as Alex mentioned, he was kind of squat and he had a very long body apparently and pretty short legs. And his alleged, well-proven granddaughter, Cherry, had a very similar type of proportion also and looked very much like him facially.
Alice, have we covered all the questions pretty much that have come in?
We've had a few other questions. We had Mike Lawler ask this, and we also had someone, Karen asked it in the chat. What exactly are the boundaries of the 800 acres that he left, and what all does that cover? I don't know if you want to answer that, Arlene.
Well, I couldn't tell you exactly, but several neighborhoods, including the neighborhood called Miradero, which is directly below, was involved there. And so you'd be talking about areas that are way up in the hills, up in the Verdugo Mountains, as well as neighborhoods to the east, west, and south of the property that are now developed. What is now known historically as Cumberland Heights, Miradero, by the way, which if you ever go up in the mountains behind the Brand Library and you look at the neighborhood Miradero, which is a couple of blocks right below the Brand Park area, you'll see red tile roofs. And there's a legend, which has not been documented anywhere, that Mrs. Brand, because of her love of things looking Tuscan, insisted that the homes developed below the boundaries of Brand Park would have red tile roofs, and the houses to this day do have red tile roofs, but we've never been able to document that connection between her wishing for that and it being so. It's fairly feasible that she did want that. I don't know if somebody, there are a lot of historians online today, and if anybody knows the actual boundaries, but I would say, the neighborhoods that are probably, above Glen Oaks that surround the library, and the space in back is that acreage. And if anybody hikes up in back of the library, you will see the remnants of structures, some of them fairly mysterious, that could be one or the other thing, but rocks that have been put in place and stone remnants of things. So clearly there were other structures up there that he probably built.
For all of their love of Tuscany, it's interesting that the look of the Brand home itself is that Moorish architecture, which was taken from the Chicago World's Fair. So they liked a lot of different things.
Yes. And one of the other things, Mr. Brand was kind of quirky and eclectic, and he did end up with a pyramid as a grave. It was fabricated for him, and I think that was his wish, and put in after his death. So he had a very unusual grave site, and of course the cemetery, which includes the extended family as well as the Brands and their beloved dogs, is just to the northwest up the hill from what is now the Brand Library. And you can look at that. It's of course fenced in and you can't look specifically at the graves, but there is information online about that. The cemetery is now a local Glendale landmark and it has been described in detail.
Oh, sorry, Arlene.
No, we have a picture. I don't know if we're going
to show that at the end, Arlene. That's our last
photo. We're going to show Mrs. Brand paying respects to her husband at the grave. So if there are any other questions about Mr. Brand, as mentioned, he did copy Nathaniel Dryden, his brother-in-law, did design the structure. He didn't do many houses. There are a couple other in Glendale, including Art Even, which was the home of his business partner, Dan Campbell. Mr. Dryden designed that home too, which is also very eclectic. And his sister's daughter, Virginia, married Mr. Robinson of the Robinson department store estate. So that estate, which is in Beverly Hills, was also designed by Nathaniel Dryden.
We have a question from Kathy Grayson, and I'll ask you, Arlene, if you know the real history, but then I think it would also be interesting to hear from the artists in their sort of imagined history, what they think is the truth. Do you think that Mary Louise ever acknowledged Lee and Jack, the children, or anyone else in the Brand family ever acknowledged them?
Well, I've read Judy Brand's bio and, as much as I can get my hands on. And there's also a historic context statement that's very thick that was done when the Miradero property was restored in 2014. And I have not seen any evidence written of Mrs. Brand acknowledging. That doesn't mean that she didn't know. And, open secrets were much more the style of the day for things like this than they are today, where every single thing and every gory detail is out in the open and all over the place. So the answer is no. I've not seen any evidence that they knew each other, although we do understand that Bertie did go to a party at the Brand estate and he did take her places and they worked together, Bertie and Mr. Brand. So that's seems very feasible.
So Katie, speaking as Mrs. Brand, do you think she ever would have had anything to do with his children?
I think in Alex's production she did.
We'd like to think that she softened and embraced these children who were her husband's offspring, but that would take a big heart.
Yeah,
I think there's
Let's give her a ride.
Brand was very, she was described by a number of people as being very quiet and somewhat introverted. Interestingly enough, Mr. Brand wrote from Galveston, by the way. He took a little side trip for 4 years to Galveston after he had moved here to capitalize on that city's building boom. That's where he met Mary Louise Dean, his wife. And there's very little talk about her. He wrote to his mother and his sisters, and he didn't talk about Mary Louise. We don't really have any confirmed evidence about there was no publicity about their marriage. And after he passed, a lot of the big social life and those fun day Sundays that Alex mentioned and the big parties ceased. And it wasn't because she was a shy person. I happened to meet her grandniece by marriage, Nancy Koldowie, who is the last person to have been buried in the Brand Cemetery. She was buried there in 2020. And she talked quite a bit about having spent time with Mrs. Brand after the passing of Mr. Brand, and that she was a very sweet woman. She loved her dogs. She was crazy about her pets and very nice to be around and very quiet. And as a child, Nancy really enjoyed being with Mrs. Brand.
Lisa, what were you going to say about Mrs. Brand, the future Mrs. Brand?
Alex wrote this really beautiful turn when Kitty's when Mary Louise is asking, do they have his eyes? And then she says, yes, and his ears. And then there's this gasp. And it really, it changes the scene. And I think there's a beauty. I mean, there's a sadness about that, but then also I imagine there's a beauty in, your husband's blood being passed on, even if it's not through you, and how heartbreaking that is. But also to be like, oh, if I look in their face, I might see, his face in some way. So I think Alex, for me, wrote that was a big shift in the play and opening her character, even though it didn't complete it until the end. So I could see a world where, yes, they do unite in some way.
I don't feel like our Mrs. Brand is the Mrs. Brand that Arlene particularly described. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, Alice, or
Yeah,
comments?
we had a question from Colin Ma, who was asking, and Arlene, I don't know if you know the actual answer, but do you know if Brand did this big donation to the city of Glendale out of the goodness of his heart, or was we heard a bit about tax incentives earlier in the play? Did that play a role in the decision to leave his estate to the city?
Judy Brand made a very good explanation in her biography of him about, some people just saw him as a self-serving robber baron, which he might have been. I mean, he certainly was a capitalist of the highest order and loved speculating on real estate and doing all kinds of land deals. But a lot of the things he did throughout his career benefited Glendale. He created, bought, and then sold the water company, the phone company, the electric company in the city. He started a bank, and a lot of people just went, oh, robber baron. But a lot of people and a lot of elements of the city benefited from the things he did. One example of that is the selling of the White Elephant Glendale Hotel to the Adventists for a hospital for a pretty discounted rate. And there are a number of incidences documented where he was really considering, he just wanted Glendale to be great and to be famous and to be revered by everybody. And he and Huntington put these huge ads in the paper. Have you been to Glendale? I actually have a copy of one of those ads, and I'm going to post it in Vintage Glendale, which is a Facebook page that's dedicated to Glendale's history. Oh, I did. I posted it this afternoon. I don't think we have that, but he did do a lot that you could say supported the city and its infrastructure as well as its civic life. So I would not say, I mean, he might have wanted to preserve his legacy and his name, and he certainly did that by naming everything after himself. But I wouldn't say that he did the idea of the library, the park, and he also mentioned the arts. I wouldn't say he did that to make money. I mean, he was going to be dead anyway, and he didn't have any children to speak of. So I think he did have a certain civic philanthropic approach to things. And, so you could probably call him a benign philanthropic robber baron.
I would make the argument that that Glendale was his first child and he left his estate to his first child.
Yeah, exactly. That's very well put. Yeah, I think we could all see it that way. That's good, Alex.
Glendale could certainly have been had a different name. It could have been Brand City or Brandland or something like that. So, what else, Alice?
I think that's all the questions that we have in the chat. Unless there's anyone who still has something they're desperate to ask, I think that gets us through everybody.
Steve, you wanted to ask Alex how he became a playwright. I think you were interested in that.
Yeah, Alex, you've told us a lot about Mr. Brand through this. Tell us a little bit about how you got into playwriting.
Oh no, I'm an enigma. I can't reveal anything. No, I grew up. My parents were very supportive of my and my brother's endeavors, and I was just drawn to theater. And I was writing at a very young age. I wrote my first play in third grade, and my parents joke that once I made this a career, they said, we should have all the times as a kid we took you to the theater. We should have taken you to a courthouse or something or a hospital. So it's their fault. But no, I mean, I was playwright in New York. So I moved to New York after college. I studied theater at Skidmore College, moved to DC, which is where I'm from, for about a year and a half to save money to move to New York. And then I was in New York City for about 14 years, working first as an actor briefly and mercifully short, and then focusing solely on writing with a little directing since then. So I was so happy to come to LA and discover the rich theater community here and do as much theater as I can here and see as much theater as I can here.
Yeah.
So it's been real wonderful joy for me.
All right, I think that is, unless any of the panelists want to ask each other questions or comments or things that we didn't address, or burning issues that you want to bring up, or anything like that, then I think we'll say goodbye. And I really want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this event. And I'm going to say goodbye on behalf of the Associates of Brand Library and Art Center. Thank you for joining us and for your many questions. The Associates relies on membership for support to do our work at Brand. And this year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary of our works, jury exhibition of works on paper at Brand Library. So find out about us on our website, which is posted here. And while you're there, donate or become a member. We'd love to have you. So Steve?
Yeah, no, it was just a terrific, fun event tonight. Some great writing, some great acting going on. I want to thank Debra and Alice and your cat that walked through the screen there a little bit. Isabel, Alex, very enjoyable. Lisa and your dog, was it a whining dog? I forget. Kitty and Arlene, terrific as always. Whenever the Historical Society needs a special Zoom meeting, digital event, we can always Arlene bringing up some great history on that. So I thank everybody. Yes, and if you're interested in the Glendale Historical Society, glendalehistorical.org. Good evening. Thank you.
I'll just jump on before we go to say one last thank you to our sponsors and to all the donors for Antaeus who support this kind of free and innovative community programming and all of the work that we do on our stage. And on that note, we are reopening our theater for live in-person programming later this month. So if you'd like to know more about what's coming up at the theater, you can visit our website. It's antaeus.org. I put the link in the chat. If you'd like to get updates about what's coming up, you can sign up for our newsletter. And I just thank you all for being with us tonight and everyone who made this evening possible, and wish you all the best and hope we can see all of you at the theater very soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, Kitty, Lisa, Steve, Alice, and Arlene, who we could not have done it without you. Thank you all, everybody, and good night.